Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the power to rise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa li kol tzarchi. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for providing for all our needs. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanoten layaf koach. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for daily renewing our strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir shena me'enai udnoma me'afafai. We praise you, eternal God, sovereign of the universe, for the blessing of sleep and the privilege of waking up to a new day, especially such a beautiful spring day as we have today. Baruch she'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam ha'mechulal b'fi amo meshubach u'mipa'ar bilshon chasidav ve'avadav bishvachot u'vizmarot negadelchecha u'namlichecha malchei chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai melech mechulal b'tishbachot. With the coming of day and night, I will enter the covenant of God, and when evening and morning depart, I will recite God's decrees. God Most High, you are my righteousness, you teach me goodness. You are the fountain of knowledge, the dwelling place of holiness, and the summit of glory. Eternal might and majesty are yours. I will choose whatever you teach me, gladly accepting your judgments. As soon as I move my hands and feet, I will praise your name when I go out and when I come in, when I lie down and when I rise up. When I rest on my bed, I will sing your praise, and in the company of my friends, I will praise you with the words of my mouth. Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat.
Mizmor Shir Leyom HaShabbat.
The righteous shall flourish like the palm, grow tall like the cedar of Lebanon. Planted in the house of the Eternal One, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They shall still bear fruit in old age. They shall ever be fresh and green, proclaiming that God is just, my rock, in whom there is no flaw.
ישתבח שמך לעד מלכנו, האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים ובארץ. כי לך נאה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו. שיר ושבחה, הלל וזמרה, ברכות והודאות מעתה ועד עולם. ברוך אתה אדוני, הבוחר בשירי זמרה.
And we continue with the Shema. We are at the bottom of page 135.
Baruch hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, osei shalom uvorei et hakol. In your mercy, you give light to the earth and all who live on it. And in your goodness, you renew creation continually day by day. How manifold are your works, O God! With wisdom have you made them all. The world is full of your creations. Your handiwork proclaims your praise. The radiant stars bear witness to your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'orot. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching. Make us faithful to your commandments and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love, you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam va'ed.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבבך. ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, ושבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך, ובשכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות בביתך ובשעריך.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Some of you may know that for my gap year, after I finished university, I went to Prague in what was then Czechoslovakia. And I found myself regularly at Shabbat services at the Old Neuschule, which as an American Reform Jew, grew up in a congregation very much like FPS, I could not make head or tail of what was going on at the Old Neuschule, with these Litvaks basically speaking Yiddish, and I could not follow the service at all. And the one bit where I always felt like I could grasp on and I knew where they were was when the chazan, this sort of round, bull-chested, loud-voiced chazan from the front of the shul would go, Adonai Elohechem Emet. And that was when I knew we were finishing the V'ahavta and we were moving into the next part. And so I always think of Victor Feuerlicht when I get to this part and object strongly to the rearranging of the words in the English translation, because it was that emet that made me know where we were in the service. So in the middle of page 138, true and good and beautiful, sound, established, and enduring are these words, now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer, as you were the God and Redeemer of our mothers and fathers. You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly, you are first and you are last. We have no Redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you this song.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh.
Shira chadasha shivchu ge'olim l'shimcha al sfat hayam. Yachad kulam hodu v'himluchu v'amru.
Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. To Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo. Go aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Gal Yisrael.
As we come to the Amidah, the high point of the morning service, I am excited to be prepared to discombobulate and disorientate Andrea even further. Rebecca likes to tell the story of I must have been United Synagogue visitor to our services who had come for a bar or bat mitzvah, a woman who came up to Rebecca afterwards and said how wonderful it was that you include the ladies. And Rebecca thought, this is somebody who's pleased that men and women sit together. But it turned out what she was talking about was the inclusion of the matriarchs in the Amidah, of which, traditionally in an Orthodox synagogue is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you move on without including the matriarchs. But just to discombobulate and disorient a little bit further, I'm going to mix it up because I noticed that all of the matriarchs come after all of the patriarchs in our service. So I'm going to do them in a slightly different order, generational order. I apologize if that confuses you. If it does, just ignore me and do it in the order that you are used to doing it. Adonai Sifatai is at the top of page 140.
Sefatai tiftach ufi agite. Tiftach ufi agite hilatecha.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol. See, I'm totally confused myself by doing this. Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'Imaot, U'Mevi Ge'ula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava. Melech Ozer U'Moshia Amagen, Baruch Ata Adonai, Ezrat Sarah, V'Magen Avraham. Ata Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye Metim, Ata Rav Lehoshia. Mashiv HaRuach, U'Morid HaGeshem, Mazriach HaShemesh, U'Morid HaTal.
Mechalkel Chayim B'Chesed, Mechayim Meitim B'Rachamim Rabim, Somek Noflim V'Rofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umagayem Emunato Lishenei Afar. Mi chamocha bal gedrot, umi domela melech meimit umachayei u'matzmiach Yeshua.
Baruch Ata Adonai, Mechaye Hametim. Yikadesh et Shimcha Be'olam, Keshem Shimaktishim Oto Bishmei Marom, Kakatuv Al Yad Niviecha,
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzavaot, Maloch ol haaretz kevodo.
Kvodo Malei Olam.
Baruch kevod Adonai mimekomo.
Mimkomcha Malkenu Tafia, Timloch Aleinu, Ki Mechakim Anachnu Lach.
Imloch k'Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, Ador v'ador, Hallelujah. Ledovador, nagid godlecha, Ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Ledovador, nagid godlecha, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. V'shivchacha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, hakadosh baruch hu, ledovador, nagid godlecha, ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish.
Baruch Ata Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם יספרו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידש לו שבת. חמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך, שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת.
Our God and God of our ancestors, may our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Sanctify us by your commandments and make us loyal to your teaching. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Eternal One, let the holiness of your Sabbath enter our hearts, and may all Israel who hallow your name be exalted by its peace. Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh HaShabbat. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha be'yirah na'avod. Modim anachnu lach, she'atahu Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu le'olam va'ed. Tzur chayenu, magen yishenu, atahu ledor vador. Nodeh lecha u'nesaper tehilatecha al chayenu hamisurim beyadecha. Ve'al nishmotenu hapekudot lach. Ve'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu. Ve'al niflotecha v'tovotecha shebechol et erev v'avoker v'tzohorayim. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lehodot.
Sim shalom, sim shalom, sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed.
Baruch atah Adonai, oseh hashalom. Let's take a few moments to be together in silence.
Adonai to me, Vergoali. Adonai to me, Vergoali. Ratzon, Irefi. Adonai to me, Vergoali. Adonai to me, Vergoali. Say shalom bimromah, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol bnei Adam. Say shalom bimromah, say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol bnei Adam. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael.
Our Torah service, Kriyat HaTorah, begins on page 481.
In kamocha va'elohim Adonai ve'en k'maasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim umemshaltecha bechol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai imloch leolam va'ed. Adonai os le'amo yitain, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom.
We do have Dean and Franklin in the building today, which is wonderful. Vika, our Torah reader, is reading from home, so we do not have Torah scroll choreography. We go directly into the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, God
Romama Shemo Yachtav.
Adonai Hagedula, Hagura, Hatiferet, Hanitzach Vahod, Kol Bashamayim Uvaretz, Lecha Adonai Hamamlacha, V'hamitnaseh.
Right, I think it's me. Shalom Shabbat, can you hear me? So, yes, I have a few notes here, good. So our portion is Tazria Metzora today from Leviticus, and it deals with laws of ritual purity. And these are really widely misunderstood. The terms used are tahara and tuma, and they are not really equivalent to like clean and dirty. It's usually it refers to some kind of physical manifestation of spiritual or moral failing. Often it appears in the Torah as a warning or also as punishment, specifically for I can hear some noises. Lashon hara, bad-mouthing somebody. The famous case of Miriam, who was chatting with her brother Aaron about the Cushite wife of Moses. And God didn't like it one little bit, and she was struck with this mysterious plague called tzarat. It's often translated as leprosy, but it's not exactly that. Anyway, our portion describes purification rituals that for mothers following childbirth, and then it moves on to how to identify and to respond to those people infected with tzarat. And then the final section deals with emissions of bodily fluids, both in women and in men, pretty graphic, and those emissions that require purification, and hence the importance of mikvah in every traditional Jewish community. Now, this is a double portion, so it's pretty long. It's nearly 70 verses long, but we only dealing with 12 of those, and they deal with the plague of tzarat, or some kind of infestation that you find in a house. It's some kind of, I don't know, mildew, dry rot, some kind of contamination. It's referred to as the plague of tzarat. Right. I can hear it, see him. Yamod, Yamod, David Chaim ben Abraham, levarech et haTorah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'chabanu mekol ha'amim. V'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen.
Amen. Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe. Sorry, I make it bigger. וידבר אדוני אל משה ואל אהרון לאמור, כי תבואו אל ארץ כנען, אשר אני נותן לכם לאחוזה, ונתתי נגע צרעת בבית ארץ אחוזתכם, ובא אשר לא הבית, והנה, והגיד לכהן לאמור, כרגע נראה לי בבית, וציווה הכהן ופנו את הבית, בטרם יבוא הכהן לראות את הנגע, ולא יטמע כל אשר בבית, ואחר כן יבוא הכהן לראות את הבית, וראה את הנגע, והנה הנגע בקירות הבית, שקררות ורקרקות או אדמות, ומהריהן שפל מן הקיר, ויצא הכהן מן הבית אל פתח הבית, והסגיר את הבית 7 ימים, ושב הכהן ביום השביעי, וראה, והנה פסע הנגע בקירות הבית, וציווה הכהן, וחילצו את האבנים אשר בהן הנגע, והשליכו הן אל מחוץ לעיר, אל מקום טמא, ואת הבית וקציע מבית סביב, ושכפו את האפר אשר בקיר אל מחוץ לעיר, אל מקום טמא, ולקחו אבנים אחרות, sorry, it's moving about. I'm lost now. I've got my yad, but ולקחו אבנים אחרות והביאו אל, sorry, I've got something, hold on. Excuse me, I'm just opening my own, which doesn't move. Okay. Oh, sorry, I go to the place I found. I think I was here. Okay. וציווה הכהן והילצו את האבנים אשר בהן הנגע, והשליכו את הן אל מחוץ לעיר, אל מקום טמא, ואת הבית יקציעה מבית סביב, ושפכו את האפר אשר הקצו אל מחוץ לעיר, אל מקום טמא, ולקחו אבנים אחרות והביאו אל תחת האבנים, ואפר אחר ייקח ותח את הבית, ואם ישוב הנגע ופרח בבית, אחר חילץ את האבנים, ואחרי הקצות את הבית, ואחרי קיטוח, ובא הכהן וראה, והנה פסע הנגע בבית, וצרעת ממרת הוא בבית טמא הוא, ונתץ את הבית, את אבניו ואת עציו, ואת כל עפר הבית, והוציאו אל מחוץ לעיר, אל מקום טמא. Right. So Adonai said to Moses and Aaron, spoke, saying, when they come to the land of Canaan, which I give them for a possession, and I will put a plague of tzara'at on a house which is in the land of your possession, then the owner of the house will come and say to the priest, it seems to me that there is something like a plague in my house. And the priest will order the house to be emptied, cleared, before coming to examine whether it's a plague, so that everything that's in the house will not be contaminated or impure. It's interesting that actually the plague is not a plague unless the priest says so. So it is safe to use everything that's in the house before it is declared unclean. And the plague is seen, he sees that it's a plague in the walls of the house, and it's like greenish or reddish streaks, and they are on the surface of the wall. Then the priest will go out of the house to the door of the house, and the house will be closed for 7 days. Then the priest will return on the 7th day, and he will examine whether it's a plague, whether it's and the plague spread on the walls of the house, and the priest will order that they remove the stones which are contaminated, affected by the plague, and the stones will be taken out of the city to an unclean place. It's not like a dump, actually. The place becomes unclean only when those unclean stones are put there. And the house will be scraped all around inside, and the dust scraping plaster which they removed will be taken outside the city to this unclean place. And then they will take the different stones to replace the ones that they had removed, and new plaster to, well, I don't know, render plaster the house, replaster it, I suppose. And when the plague returns and spreads in the house, after they removed those stones and after they scraped it inside and replastered, then the priest will come again and see that it has the plague has spread, and the plague of tzara'at, and it's like a serious case of tzara'at, and the house is declared unclean. And then the house has to be torn down, and the stones and the timbers and all the plaster of the house taken outside the house, the city, to this unclean place. David, final blessing.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
And then
Amen.
Yesha Koach. Thank you so much to David and to Vika. I am constantly in awe of Vika's erudition and knowledge. And so I'm so grateful that when we found out at short notice that she and I would be leading this service, that she swept in to take care of the parasha. Thank you so much, Vika, and Mazel Tov, and Yesher Koach to David and to Vika both. A great honor for me to invite Robert Budd to read Haftorah in honor of his upcoming birthday, I believe. Is that right, Robert?
Yep.
Great. Happy birthday.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nvi'im tovim v'ratzah v'divrechem hanechemim be'emet Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nvi'ei ha'emet b'tzedek. A man came from Baal Shelisha, bringing the man of God bread of the first barley harvest, 20 loaves with fresh grains and ears of new corn. So Elisha said, "Give to the people to eat." His servant said, "How can you put this small amount in front of 100 people?" But he insisted, "Give it to the people to eat. The Eternal has said that they will eat and have some left over." So he gave it to them. They ate and had some left over, as the Eternal had said. Naaman, the commander of the Aramean army, was important to the king, who valued him highly because to him the Eternal had given Aram victory. He was a valiant soldier who had a skin disease. Once when the Arameans went out on a raid, they carried off a young girl from the land of Israel, a captive, and she became servant to Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my lord could go to the prophet in Samaria, he would cure him of his skin disease." Hearing this, Naaman went to his master and told him, "This is what the girl from Israel said." So the king of Aram said, "Go and take this letter to the king of Israel." So he went, taking along 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 changes of clothing. He brought the letter to the king of Israel. It said, "This letter will introduce my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his skin disease." And when the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God with power over life and death, that this fellow wants me to cure a man of a skin disease? He is obviously looking to pick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent the king the following message: "Why have you torn your clothes? Let this man come to me, and he will learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and waited for Elisha at the entrance of his house. And Elisha sent him this message: "Go bathe 7 times in the river Jordan, and your flesh will be cleansed and return to normal." And this made Naaman angry, and he left, saying, "I thought he would come out and stand here and call out in the name of the Eternal his God and wave his hand at the spot and cure the disease. Aren't the waters of the Amanah and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Can't I wash in them and get clean?" And he walked off in a fury. Naaman's servants went up to him and said, "Sir, had the prophet asked you to do something elaborate, surely you would have done it. Why not do it then when he only asks you to wash and be clean?" And Naaman then went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, as the man of God had said. And his flesh became clean as the flesh of a young child. He and his men returned to the man of God. Standing in front of him, Naaman said, "Now I know that the God of Israel is the only God in the whole world. Please now accept a present from me." But Elisha answered, "As the Eternal whom I serve lives, I tell you that I will not accept the gift." Naaman entreated him to accept, but he refused. Then Naaman said, "If not, please let me have 2 mule loads of earth on which to build an altar, back home, because I will never again offer a burnt offering or sacrifice to any God but the eternal. And I hope that God will pardon me in one thing. When my master goes to the temple of the god Rimmon to worship there, and he leans on my arm so that I have to bow down in the temple of Rimmon, I hope God will forgive me this one thing, that I have to bow down in the temple of Rimmon. And Elisha said to him, go in peace. Oops.
Robert, would you like to read the blessing at the end?
Yes, I'm doing that. I'm just getting lost. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol halomim b'tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'aman, ha'omer v'oseh, hamdaber kayem, shekol devarim emet v'tzedek.
Yeshua, Robert, thank you. Such a great story about how sometimes when we're looking for solutions, we look for really complicated and difficult ones when something simple might work just as well or better. So thank you very much, Robert, and happy birthday from all of us. And John, I think, has the community prayers.
John, you are muted.
Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern our country with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizen and the stranger and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our country and the world. Bless all our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, established as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with the faithfulness of the aims of its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice always. May this Shabbat renew our energy to build and sustain a better world and to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, John. Our service continues on page 486 in the middle of the page. Yahallelu et Shem Adonai ki nisgav shemo levado.
הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו, תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל, עם קרובו, הללויה, הללויה.
And in the middle of page 488, God's teaching is perfect, reviving the soul. God's word is unfailing, making wise the simple. God's precepts are right, delighting the mind. God's commandments are clear, enlightening the eyes. God's doctrine is pure, enduring forever. God's guidance is true and altogether just. Behold, a good doctrine has been given you. Do not forsake it.
עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה מאושר דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה חדש ימינו כקדם חדש ימינו כקדם כקדם.
I got a haircut on Wednesday. I had been looking forward to it for weeks, resisting the urge to give myself a buzz cut as my hair got bigger and bigger in lockdown, wondering whether it hid or emphasized my bald patch that my hair was for the first time in years long enough to be curly. And I went to the gym this week, not once, but 4 times, including one day when I wasn't planning to because I woke up before my alarm and found myself at the gym before I even stopped to think about it. And I went to a non-essential shop. We've been spring cleaning in my house and had a couple of bags of clothes and books to take to Oxfam. And my son helped me carry them there, and he saw her shirt he liked. And so I bought something in a shop for the first time in God knows how long. And then last night, I took off work an hour early and put shoes on and all but ran to my local pub to join a bunch of friends who had reserved a table in the beer garden. And I sat and drank beers with my friends who were in the same place I was. Life is returning to normal in this country. 13 months after that shocking first lockdown began, schools are open, nail bars, hairdressers, gyms and shops and pubs. And coming, as this reopening does in the spring, of course, it feels like a sort of rebirth. We have science to thank for this. Lockdowns helped, of course, but really it's the vaccines that are getting life in England back to normal, back to what used to be normal. The UK's vaccination program has been a roaring success. We've administered 60 doses of vaccine per 100 people, which is one of the highest vaccination rates in the world. Yes, Yom Ha'atzmaut, it's only half of Israel's 119 doses per 100 people. We know it's a 2-dose vaccine, so most people need to get 2 doses. But Israel is, of course, much smaller than the UK. Among big countries, the UK is basically tied with the United States for the highest vaccination rate. The previous United States president, Mr. Donald Trump, referred to vaccines as a medical miracle. And in fact, though he is not, as far as I know, a rabbi, that is actually a reasonably Jewish way to look at vaccines. Tikkun olam, healing the world, a concept which, incidentally, I do not believe corrupts Judaism, calls on us, people, humanity, to partner with God to repair and heal and restore. We have our own part to play in creating miracles. But there is another way of looking at vaccines. Vaccines are magic bullets. They are a technological fix for a global problem, and they're for sale. We don't have to buy them ourselves, of course. Our governments do that for us. But part of the reason the United Kingdom and the United States and Israel are doing so well at vaccinating is that they are rich countries. They can buy their way out of the problem, this global coronavirus pandemic. Here in the UK, a lot of us changed our behavior when the government told us to. We stayed home. We wore and wear masks. Not so much so in the United States. Masks became politically controversial there. Lockdowns were never as complete or as widespread there as they have been here. But in the long run, that may not matter, the difference in the behaviors here and there because of vaccines. Magic bullets for sale. And look, I am grateful, extraordinarily grateful for the vaccines. I got mine as soon as my GP offered it to me, and I volunteered at vaccination centers, and I thank the vaccination program for my haircut and my evening in the pub with my friends last night. But I do wonder if, thanks to this magic bullet, the world has lost out on a teachable moment. Because there are many, many other problems in the world that cannot be fixed with a magic bullet. We are looking for magic bullets to fix the climate crisis, electric cars and the like. We are looking for magic bullets to end plastic pollution, compostable vegetable bags, and maybe these things will help a little, but will they work fast enough to make a difference? And even if they do, there are problems for which there is no magic bullet, for which there can be no magic bullet. In this country, one of the wealthiest in the world, a 22-year-old football player had to shame the government into providing free meals for school children in the holidays so they would not go hungry. In this country, which has had rule of law and political stability for centuries longer than almost anywhere on earth, many women and girls are afraid to walk alone at night. And don't even get me started on the shooting of unarmed Black men and boys, 13-year-old boys in the United States, where I grew up, in my hometown. There is no vaccine for these problems. There is no vaccine for child poverty. There is no vaccine for violence against women. There is no vaccine for racism. Those are problems that require permanent and profound changes in human behavior on a massive scale, the kind we initially needed to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Lockdown showed that when we understand that a problem is urgent and deadly, we can change how we behave, all of us, in a handbrake turn. I'm glad I was able to get a haircut this week. I was thrilled to be able to get into the gym. I was delighted to drink beers with my friends at that pub. But as vaccines, those medical miracles, those magic bullets, allow us to resume our normal lives, I cannot help but hope that not everything will go back to just the way it was before. Shabbat Shalom. And we head into the concluding part of our service with Aleinu on page 520. Which I hope will be led from the building, because you don't want to hear me singing Aleinu.
בשמיים מעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, 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 אין עוד.
It is hard to feel serene when our world is not complete, when those who once brought wholeness to our life have gone. This weekend, we are marking the yahrzeits of Joanne Harris, the mother of Daniel and Jacob O'Donnell, and the sister of Raphael Harris, of Peter Liepman, the brother of Sheila Lyon, of Norma Levy, Nahama Baruch Halevi, the mother of James Levy, of Rudy Oppenheimer, the brother-in-law of Corinne Oppenheimer, of Marion Siegel, the mother of Joyce Lucas, and of Morris Needleman, a beloved member of Finchley Progressive Synagogue for many years, who we remember this Shabbat, Yom HaAtzmaut, because of his love for and his contributions to Israel. Yet in the emptiness their passing leaves behind, we are not alone. For we have the companionship of the living, and even our loved ones who have died live on in our hearts. For what they were is part of what we have become. We honor them best when we live as they would wish, responsibly and happily, even in the shadow of our loss, and so draw closer to the source of life, in whom every life finds meaning, purpose, and hope, with the words of the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ve'alma tivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dekol Beit Yisrael, bagala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ul'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudusha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran ve'alma ve'imru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol b'nei adam, ve'imru, amen. Do we have someone doing announcements?
We do, yes. Thank you, Richard. Hi.
Bye tomorrow. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom and Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome to Finchley Progressive. Shabbat Shalom. And thank you so much, Richard, for leading us in prayer this morning and for both amusing us and provoking us to thought and reflection. We're just so lucky to have you able to take on and lead our services for us. Thank you, of course, also to Dean for your role in leading the service, and to Franklin, as ever, for your music. Thank you, Vika, for reading Torah for us this morning, and to everyone who participated in the service. To David, to Robert, to John. Happy birthday, Robert, on behalf of everyone here at Finchley Progressive. I know we are all wishing you a happy day. A few community announcements for the week ahead. It's actually quite a simple week for us. All of our normal activities will be continuing as usual. For those of you who were intrigued or bemused by today's Torah portion, next week at our Shabbat service, our adult B'nai Mitzvah class is going to be reading what comes next, which is Acharei Mot Kedoshim. And tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in Cafe Ivriar, we have a wonderful opportunity to meet with them in advance of that service next week. They've been studying the portion and they'll be sharing their insights with us, answering questions like, how, as modern Jews, do we engage with some of these more difficult Torah portions? What does holiness mean? And what does it have to do with contemporary Judaism? So please do come along tomorrow morning at 10 to meet our adult B'nai Mitzvah class and hear from them about next week's Torah portion. Looking a bit further ahead, not this week, but next week, we've got 2 events coming up, which I know Rabbi Rebecca flagged up in the weekly email, which are opportunities for us all to come together and contribute to something a bit larger than the Finchley community. So on Wednesday, the 28th, at 6 p.m, we have the London Mayoral Assembly. And just like haircuts and going to the gym, for the first time in a year after it was put off, we now at long last have an opportunity to really participate in the democratic life of our city. The election is back on, the cancelled assembly is back on, and along with all of our fellow members of Citizens UK across London who worked so hard to generate a manifesto that reflects the concerns of all of us in our communities, we're going to be able to meet with the mayoral candidates and ask them to sign up to our manifestos rather than just agreeing to theirs. In Barnet, we are going to be meeting. We've got a Zoom watch party with other members of Barnet citizens, all our friends at Middlesex University Students' Union, Hendon School, the Somali Bravanese, Finchley Reform. We're going to be meeting together to join in the Mayoral Assembly, and I'd really love it if as many of you as possible could join us. And I'm just going to pop the link into the chat right now and right here. Please do sign up. We've committed to take at least 50 people. So if members of your household, if multiple members of your household are coming, please sign up separately so we can count you all. And we look forward to seeing you there at 6 o'clock on Wednesday 28th. And that weekend, we have the Liberal Judaism Biennial Conference. This year's conference is on the theme of breaking down walls, inclusion in action. I know that LJ is going to start trailing specific sessions that are coming up very shortly, but it's really easy to join this year. It's all online, and it's really going to be upholding the diversity of Jewish voices in our progressive movement, and it's an opportunity for stimulating discussion, fun activities, and it's got a really practical focus on how we create and sustain vibrant and inclusive Jewish communities within our synagogues and beyond. So please do sign up to the LJ conference, and I look forward to seeing you there. That's it from me today. So Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And again, thank you to everyone who so ably led this service for us today.
Thank you, Tamara. Lovely. Dean, Franklin, do you have any suggestions for a closing song today?
We're going to be finishing with Not a Don Alarm.
What?
Yeah, I know. We're going to finish with Ein Keloheinu, which you can find on page 528.
Ein
we finish with a concluding blessing for all of us. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo b'shalom. Eternal God, grant strength to your people. Eternal God, bless your people with peace. Shabbat Shalom, and please stay with us for, I believe, Dean to lead Kiddush and Josie to lead Hamotzi. If you have wine and challah handy, please join us. If you don't have wine and challah handy, please join us.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz, Uvayom hashvi shavat vayinafash. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Amen. L'chaim.
Josie, you're muted.
I'm only the techie person. How do I know?
You're the one who
Motzi lechem min haaretz. Oh, we give thanks to God for bread. Our voices join in grateful chorus. As to you our prayer is said. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Motzi lechem min haaretz. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, and thanks to everybody who has joined us in every which way. Thank you to our Facebook friends and everywhere else. We'll be turning off the live. Josie will be turning off the live stream now. Thank you.